Hello, everyone. Today we will be looking at the ASQ3, where we'll be having a refresher training. ASQ3 stands for Ages and Stages Questionnaire, and it's the third version. So we're going to begin today. I am Rashid Aziz, the Education Specialist, and I hope you find much value in this training. The objectives for our training today is we're going to learn what the ASQ3 is, first of all, how to set up the ASQ3, and how it is set up in its formation, how the kits are set up, and how each of the areas of the tool are set up. Also, how to talk to parents about the screening, how to choose the correct tool for the screening, the importance of involving parents through the entire entire duration of the project, and also how to administer the screening with fidelity. And then we're going to end up with what to do after the screening. That includes how to share the results with parents and next steps. What is the ASQ3? The ASQ3 identifies children at risk for developmental delays and helps parents understand their child's growth and development milestones. The key things about the ASQ3 is that it is meant to be an early intervention. The earlier, the better. We know this because the earlier you make intervention to children, the more can be done and the more success they see. It's based on typical development. So there is some ranges and some wiggle room in what children can display. So that's acknowledged in the tool. And also, it's intended to aid your observation as a home visitor. You're always observing. You're always having the children's development in mind. But to have a tool that delineates each piece of the development that you are to be looking for really helps. It is reliable, and that is regardless of culture, regardless of socioeconomic status, and regardless of geography. The tool has proven to test for developmental delays, or I should say screen for developmental delays, and see if more screening is necessary. So we have to identify these delays as early as possible, and we know that there are going to be variation between each child. The tool takes that into consideration. Everybody's children's progress is going to look slightly different, but in most cases, it's going to fall within what we consider typical development, and that is what the tool is based on. As a professional, you can't see all this all the time, so we use this tool to help guide you through your observation, because observation alone, just off the top of your head, won't be able to gauge everything. And this tool, lastly, you're trying to see the children's development and identify which children might have a delay. The key thing about the ASQ3 tool is that it is a screening tool. That is so important. A screening tool only. It cannot determine a diagnosis. It is not a developmental tool for evaluation. It is not an assessment tool. It cannot determine the extent of the developmental delay, but it can determine whether more assessment is needed. So it is meant to not evaluate, not assess, not test, but accurately identify children who will require an assessment. It's meant to determine the risk of developmental delay. Who may be at risk of this? It can be administered by anyone who is familiar with the tool. So it does not have to be administered by a doctor or a nurse. Anyone who is trained in delivering the tool, they've been trained, they know how to do it, they can deliver the tool. As a matter of fact, it was originally designed in 1995 to be administered by the parents themselves. So this should put you at ease because it was designed to be very easy to facilitate. Parents themselves would look at their observe their children and administer the tool. So if you are in that role, you are to simply screen the child's development and use the results to see if further evaluation is necessary. In addition to that, the ASQ3 is an opportunity for learning and building relationships. This is key because we know relationships are the most important part of our work. Our relationships with the parents and the parents' relationships with their children. So it's all about building strong relationships as you go through this process. It's about supporting the parents' understanding of child growth and child development. So parents are learning as they complete this tool with you, their understanding is growing. So that's another reason why we do the ASQ3. It's also about having these repeated experiences, positive experiences of being in the position of observing and exploring the child's development as a team with you, as a partner with you. So having these experiences are so important because that makes parents more likely to continue and pay keen attention to child's development and children's development from that point on. And lastly, it is a chance to celebrate milestones. The observation, the screening process should be a very positive experience, and you're watching together with the parents of the children as they meet these milestones and demonstrate their ability to do different parts of this screening. And you can celebrate with parents what the children can do, and you can plan even for what parents are to expect next, what comes next. Now, when you get your ASQ3, it is going to be a kit. The kit is going to be full of paper versions of all the tools, all the different developmental questionnaires that are arranged by age. There will also be a CD-ROM that has an electronic version of the questionnaires and documents that you can ship with parents around different activities that support the children at different developmental stages, and also some printed support material in addition to that. The publishers of the ASQ also offer a starter kit with the questionnaires, all of them in Spanish. Also, if you have online access, you can see all the tools, all the different tools, developmental questionnaires for all the ages online, and they are fillable online, so there's no need to print. It's important to note how the ASQ is set up. The ASQ is set up with 21 different questionnaires. Each of them have 30 different questions on them. So with these 21 different questionnaires, there's one for every age range. They cover children from about 1 month to 66 months of age. You can find a questionnaire that meets every child's range of age from 1 month to 66 months of age. It is not the intent of the creators of the tool for you to use every questionnaire with every child in the program. But you are to use the appropriate questionnaire that fits the appropriate age range of the child with any child that you are trying to screen. So we have a policy at Family Focus of when we screen, when it's time for us to screen each year. You go in, you know the age of your child, and you pick the correct tool. You will not use every single tool for any given child, but you have all the tools there at your disposal so that you can select the correct tool to use given the child's age. Continuing how the ASQ is set up, it is set up covering 5 developmental domains. And those developmental domains are communication, and this is the child's language skills, both verbal and nonverbal. This is vocalizing how they speak, listening, understanding, all of those. Also, gross motor skills, The child's use of their large muscles, activities such as rolling over, walking, using their arms and legs and their whole body movement. Fine motor is one of the developmental domains. And these include the child's skill in using his or her fingers or hands, the very fine things, for activities such as eating, and hand and finger movements that require delicate and detailed motions. Also, problem solving is one of the domains on the tool, one of the 5 domains. And this is looking at a child's skill in solving problems, which in many cases relates to the way that the child plays. We can see problem solving in how the child plays and how they learn and play with toys. That's what we're looking at in that domain. And then lastly, the final of the 5 domains is personal social. And this is how the child deals with themselves, how they practice self-care skills, feeding themselves or things like that, and the ability also social to relate to others, how they play with toys and they play with others. Now, while these domains are always in the same order on all the questionnaire, in administering the screening with children, it's not necessary to answer the questions in this order. You may skip around because we're following the child and parent lead. You'll have to be responsive to the child and be willing to alter your approach. Maybe they don't want to do something right now, and if you were to force it, you get a bad screening understanding of what the child can do. So you go ahead and skip that and come back to later. So they're segmented in this way as 5 discrete domains. I just want you to know in real life, all of the developmental domains are interconnected, and many skills and milestones overlap. And they, traverse more than one domain. One activity can be seen in more than one domain. For example, a 9-month-old who was able to feed herself with small little Cheerios, pieces of cereal. They're demonstrating both fine motor skills and personal social skills. In each domain on this tool, there are 6 questions. So 5 domains, 6 questions. That is your 30 questions per questionnaire, per tool. The questions can be answered in one of 3 ways. Yes, just clearly yes, which indicates the child can do the skill described. Sometimes, which means the parent has seen the child complete the skill, but the child does not regularly do this and is not regularly using this skill. And then a clearly not yet, which indicates the parent has not seen the child demonstrate the skill. Note that question 6 is going to be developmentally harder than question 1. That's the progression that each of the question goes in. So expect that they be able to do maybe the first few, but as you get to the last one, there's more and more possibility that the child may not be able to complete the task that you ask. So let's go ahead and have a little quiz. Let's check your knowledge. We are trying to figure out which domain matches with the description given on the right side of the screen. So we have, of course, problem solving, fine motor, gross motor, communication, and pro-social is all of the 5 domains. And for example, a toddler says no. A child can name parts of the body. What would that be an example of? If you said communication, that is correct. The first domain that we learned. An infant lifts their head while lying on their stomach, and a child can walk backwards. What is this an example of? If you said gross motor, you are correct. A child scribbles with a crayon, and an infant transfers something from one hand to the other. What is this an example of? Fine motor. Very good. An infant finds an object that is partially hidden. A child groups objects by color. What is this an example of? Yes, problem solving. A toddler can take off their socks, and a child washes her own hands. What is this an example of? very good. Personal, social. All right, remember those 5 domains. Remember, each tool will look at those 5 domains and have 6 questions. And these are the types of things that we're looking for at all the different ages and stages. All right, it is so important that you involve parents in the process of completing the ASQ. So make sure that you begin talking to parents about the ASQ very early. For example, you should mention the ASQ at intake so that they know that this is a part of our program. Also, about 2 weeks before the planned screening is to occur, you should let the parents know the ASQ is upcoming in about 2 weeks. You should share a copy of the ASQ and you should get consent. So, remember that when you introduce the tool to parents, you have an opportunity to set a positive tone for the screening. Remember, we want this to be all positive, in which both the parents and the children can relax. They can know that it's not a high stakes, high tension. And this relaxation around the tool will contribute to the accuracy of the screening. It will send a clear message that observing the child's development together can be fun. Ideally, remember to mention it when they come into program services. And when it is planned, make sure you let the family know about 2 weeks in advance. Families, understandably, you say screening, and then they feel some anxiety or fear around the idea of screening their child. So prepare families in advance, and this will give you time to address these feelings in a meaningful way. It's also helpful to share a copy of the screening. I want you to know that this is not, it shouldn't feel like cheating, like, oh, I'm giving it to them before the screening. They're going to know everything. They may practice everything. That's perfectly fine. You're just trying to screen whether or not the child can do this. Developmental screening is not a pop quiz. We want parents to have all the tools they need to support their child demonstrating his skill. If the skill is there, the skill is there. Parents who have a copy of the questionnaire can be encouraged to try some of the activities beforehand with the child. This helps the screening go well, and it helps parents and children relax. And then this also promotes parents supporting their own child's development and promotes parent-child interaction. All right, let's continue thinking about how we're going to talk to parents about this screening. Remember that you are to describe the tool and the purpose of the screening. Let the parents know that it will not lead to a diagnosis. Let the parents know that it's only to see if their child might benefit from additional evaluation. And also, it will help determine their child's areas of strength. Normalize the parents' expectations around the screening. Let them know that the questions, like we said, will be progressive. They'll get harder from 1 to 6. And that the domains, what each of the domains is looking for. So normalize their expectations. Also, let them know that the child is not expected to be able to do all of the activities in any given screening, that there is a range for looking to see what of these things your child can do. Make sure you also acknowledge that some of the child's skills in any domain may just be emerging, and that is okay. Emerging skills are fine in any domain. Recognize that some of the activities may be things that the child has never tried before, but will have an opportunity to attempt during the screening. See how it's made very light and enjoyable for everyone. Address what it means or what it will mean if the screening indicates a need for follow-up. What is that going to mean? So parents already know before you go into the screening. Let the parents know the result of the screening will be kept confidential, and make sure, very important, make sure that you have the parents' consent before the screening, for the screening. Let's do a knowledge check, a small quiz. The question is, when you describe the ASQ3 to a family, you should make sure that you, what? Let them know in advance. Let them know you will share their diagnosis at the next visit. Get parental consent, put the parents at ease, tell them that you are an expert in child development. What should you make sure you do? Take a moment. Yes, you should let them know that you will share the diagnostic at the next visit or as soon as possible. You should get parental consent. You should put the parents at ease. And also, you should let them know in advance. That first one, you should let them know in advance. Let's look at how to choose the correct tool, the correct questionnaire for each age that you might find your child, the different children that you are screening. Note that screening is only valid if the tool lines up with the child's age. So if you are testing with the wrong tool, it's not valid. We did not screen correctly. The results of the screening cannot be depended upon. Make sure painstakingly that you are choosing the correct tool or correct questionnaire. How can you tell? On each tool, there's a box in the upper left corner, and it lists the correct age ranges. As you see, here's a little sample of what that box will look like. It'll say ASQ3, Ages and Stages Questionnaire, and this tool is the 48-month questionnaire. And it clearly states above that it is for 45 months and 0 days through 50 months and 30 days. Make sure that you clearly find the tool that fits the child's correct age, and know also that the range of each questionnaires, the ages, what the months and the days that it tests or looks for, it varies. So what I'm saying is that the early questionnaires have approximately a 2-month window, while questionnaires for older children have a window of up to 6 months. Why is that? Because development is changing so rapidly in those early months, and then it kind of starts to flatten as far as what we're expected to see at any given month as regards to change for those later months and years of child development in early childhood. How do we calculate the child's age? To calculate the child's age, you can simply set up a little chart like this. You want to include the screening date, the child's birthday, and then it'll give you the result of the child's correct age. And you want to have a column for year, month, and day. So, for example, let's say that the screening date was in 2015. It was the 6th month of June, and it's the 13th day. So June 13th in 2015. We'll put that right across in the screening date. And the child was born last year in 2014 in this scenario, in February on day 6, so 2/6/2014. So you set that up with the year, the month, and the date for the screening date, the year, the month, and the date for the child's birthday, and then you do simple math. You subtract 13 minus 6, which gives you 7. You do the same thing for the month, 6 minus 2, which gives you 4. And then lastly, you simply do the same thing for the year, 2015 minus 2014, which gives you 1. And this clearly shows you the child's age. The child is 1 year, 4 months, and 7 days old. For the purpose of the screening, everything is given in months. So we're going to go ahead and change this into months. 1 year and 4 months is 16 months total. 12 plus 4 is 16. And then also we just have our 7 days. One thing to note is that there's a special consideration made for preterm babies. Preterm babies, their ages must be adjusted. So for 24 months and under, if the child is 3 weeks or more premature, we expect preterm babies' development to catch up after 2 years old. So we only do this for 24 months and under, and we only do this if the child was 3 weeks or more premature. You go ahead and subtract the number of weeks or months that the child was premature to account for age. So, for example, if the mother says that the child was born 2 months premature, We're going to subtract those 2 months from the child's calculated age. So for our last example, the child's calculated age was 16 months and 7 days. So if we subtract 2 months, we'll get 14 months and 7 days. If you need help figuring out what the child's age is and how to account for the premature birth of children, you can always look at the ages and stages resources that are located online, and they actually have the ASQ age calculator that can take into consideration even the premature births. So if you don't want to do this all in your head and you just want to ability to calculate that age online, you go to this resource, ASQ calculator, and it also can be used as an app on your phone. All right, let's take a moment to think about why it's so important to involve parents in this process. First, it strengthens your relationship with the family. You're also able to share control, and when you share control, it lessens the parents' anxiety around the screening, and it heightens their competence as parents. You can also gather more accurate information about the child's development because parents know their children, and parents are the expert when it comes to their children. And then it sends a very good message by involving parents. It sends a message that parents' role in a child's life goes far beyond the day-to-day activities of feeding and changing, that they should be active participants in observing their child's development. So once again, to recap, parents are the expert when it comes to their child. Our birth is strengths-based. So when we engage in activities that build the parent's sense of competence, helping them understand their role in the relationship as a partner in discovery, and saying that we are not the expert, but rather they are the expert on their child. It gives them that sense of ability and competence. And what research shows us is that time and time again, parents are reliable when it comes to reporting their child's development. You don't have to worry about them lying or cheating. Usually, parents are very reliable when it comes to reporting their own child development skills. As parents, they have tremendous influence over the development and well-being of their child. Some parents have never heard or thought about this important role until we partner with them in completing the assessment, so they can see this concept and experience this, and it offers them an ideal context for them to have this experience. When they are involved in assessing development, they are more likely to take the lead in making changes to their parenting activities because of that experience, and meet the child's needs and help them practice those skills that they may not know how to do yet. And also, it'll help them gain a very nuanced understanding of child development, not just in general baby's growth, but the very detailed and nuanced variations that are to be expected, so that they can respond to concerns, and also they can focus on time enjoying these experiences with their children. This slide just recaps helping parents understand that development happens and how it happens, and that it will point to the child's strengths and challenges, and the parents will more likely understand that. And also, a key thing to remember here is that parents who are involved in the screening process from the beginning are more likely to accept the screening results and your professional judgment, even if the results indicate what parents may not want, a need for further evaluation. So if you just come and tell them, here are the results, of course, they're going to be skeptical of them. But if they went with you every step of the way, they saw each skill listed in the domains, and they were able to observe with you, you included them in every step, what the child could do and what the child couldn't do. When you say there's a need for further evaluation, or there's not a need for further evaluation, the parents will more than likely accept. So that's why this notice here, that make sure you bring 2 copies of the evaluation the day you are to do the screening, one for you, one for the parents, and you all two are to partner together in giving the screening. You and the parent together partner in administering the screening. You can even let the parent lead. Let's look at how this screening looks. We said that in the upper corner of the questionnaire, we have ages and stages, and it has, for example, like we saw the 48-month-old questionnaire. When you complete this front page, the top page that you see in front of you, make sure you fill it out with all of the demographic information. For example, you see the date that it's completed. You see the child's first name. You also see the information around the child's birth date and whether they're male or female. When you get to the person filling out questionnaire, know that this is meant for parents to be filling out. It was designed that way originally, so this tool front page is true to that. When it says person filling out questionnaire, you want to say it is the parent and put in the parent's name. For example, the child here is John Smith, the parent's name is Jane Smith. It is completed as if the parent is the person filling out the questionnaire. Now, where does the home visitor's name go? Down in the section that says name of people assisting with the questionnaire. That is where the home visitor's name goes. You are assisting the parent in completing this. Remember, they are the expert. And then also there's a space at the bottom of the screen for any additional information that can be listed that is unique to your program. The second page of the screening has some reminders for the parents, making sure that they try each activity before just putting down a response, making sure that they complete this questionnaire as a game, making it fun, and making sure that the child is rested and fed. And then also it says return the questionnaire, but you'll be doing it with the parents, so that part is not necessary, just remind your parents. Secondly, when you go through each of the domains, you will see the first domain starts your communication, and it gives a detailed description of what you want to ask. Does your child name at least 3 items from a common category? For example, if you say, tell me things that you can eat, can your child say cookies, eggs, cereal? Or if you say, tell me the names of some animals, can your child say cow, dog, elephant? In the process of sitting with the parent and the child, you don't want to just ask the parent to fill it in. You want to say, oh, really, the child can do it? Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, let's have them try. Always, with every question, stop, take a moment, and give the child a chance to demonstrate. Remember, this is all about celebrating the milestones, seeing the progress. It's not just enough to talk about it with the parents. You want to stop and make sure you give the child a chance to try and demonstrate it, and that makes it fun, and that's what makes the results reliable, because you are all able to see it together and the parents will accept what the results of the screening are. And then when you go ahead and do that question, and you have an answer from the parent, and you have the demonstration for the child, you fill in, like we said earlier, yes, sometimes, or not yet. 3 simple answers to any of those 30 questions: yes, sometimes, and not yet. When it comes to that last column where you're supposed to put a score, yes is a 10, sometimes is a 5, and not yet is a 0. You see on the page listed in front of us, when sometimes was circled in, you see a 5 right there. And when yes is circled in, you see a 10 at the bottom of the page. When not yet is circled in, you see they gave it a score of 0. Very simple, like that. Some questions will ask you to show a response, like eat what the child might have said, or go night-night when you ask a question, and you can note those things well. So make sure you're saying, hey, how about we give it a try? Ask each question, and by directly observing the child and the skill, you and the parent can celebrate with the child, and you can possibly even be very surprised by what the child can do, because we surprise us sometimes with doing what we thought they may not have been able to do. All right. Also, with administering the screening, let's say we go through all the sections, all 5 domains, all 30 questions. We get a yes, sometimes, or not yet, and then we also are able to get a score in that final column, a 0, a 5, or 10. At the end of each domain, there is a place for us to add up the total. Communication total, see, is right here is 25 because they added up all of the questions before it. And then here we have a total of 60 because we added up 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. The child was able to do everything in gross motor. Add up all of the scores per domain. This process should be very straightforward. It should take less than 5 minutes for this tool. You just simply add up all of the questions. You give a subtotal for each domain, and then you should be able to share the results with the family very quickly at that very meeting. Each question is scored based on responses, so you have a very accurate understanding of what the score is. At the end of the questionnaire, there are some overall questions. Make sure that you don't skip asking these overall questions with families. For example, here it says, do you think your child talks like other toddlers their age? If no, explain. So you can ask parents in general, and this helps you figure out what their concerns are. You fill in yes or no, you give their responses and explanation when necessary. Now, on the back of the questionnaire, there is what is called an information summary. And it is where we collect all of the pertinent information given in the front parts of the tool. And then at the top, you just list the child's information. This is John Smith again, his date of birth, the date the ASQ was completed, who is the person that's helping, the home visitor, that all goes at the top. And then you fill in the circles that correspond to each of the responses, the answers, and the scores. So look at communication. Communication is going to have a graph like you see here that has some black, some gray, and some white. You are going to look back at the tool. We say communication score 25. You can see they wrote in the total score of 25, and they circled, dropped it in just like a scan-tron at 25. Gross motor, we saw we added all those tips up, and it equals 60. They wrote in 60, and then they circled in 60. As you can see on the screen, 25 and 60. And they continue to do that for the rest of the domains. We have a score of 25, 60, 20, 20, and 60. See them shaded into the bar graph that ASQ has provided for us. In addition to that, they also transferred the key parts of the overall responses on the back. And this is just simply so we can have everything in one place. And all we have to do is look at the information summary. We don't have to continue to flip back through. So we're just transferring what we saw in the first pages to the back for ease, doing that for ease. And then lastly, there's a space to check for any and all follow-up actions that will be taken as a result of this tool. And then also there is a place for number 5 for you to just put what all those answers were. Communication was sometimes for number 1, yes, sometimes, not yet, sometimes. So they're just transferring what all those 30 responses were. So you'll have the particular responses, the scores that are given in the bar graph above. Let's zoom in and look at that bar graph and understand what these scores mean. So the grid contains 3 designated areas. They're black, gray, and white. And the shading is based on what ASQ calls cut-off scores. This is where the point where the child's score falls below expectations. So as you see to the far right, the white area. This represents scores that are well above the cutoff score. The child is developing typically in the domain, and further assessment is not likely needed. These are the cutoff scores in this particular one of 45, 50, 55, and 60. Then next we have the gray area. It's in the middle. It represents scores that are above the cutoff, but near it. So we need to pay attention. It's considered the monitoring zone. Child skills in that domain may need close attention and monitoring. And for scores that fall in this gray area, we may need to follow up, do a screening, do supportive activities, and ask even maybe for reevaluation. Maybe today just wasn't a good day. Maybe a reevaluation is necessary. Those are scores in the monitoring zones. For example, in communication, they have scores of 35 and 40. Lastly, in the far left, they are the black areas. These are scores that fall below the cutoff area. Scores of 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, and 0. They're in the black area. They fall below the cutoff. Additional evaluation in this domain will be helpful for the child. Please note here that some scores will vary and they may fall in different places, and they are not a cause for alarm. This just tells us as a screening that additional evaluation may be beneficial. For example, the score for communication here, 25, clearly fail in the below the cutoff. Where fine motor is in the gray area, the monitoring zone, and personal social is in the above the cutoff area. There's something to consider here when we are giving this screening. There's cultural considerations. For example, certain children may not have experiences with zippers. They may live in very warm climate, and they may not use zippers regularly or use items that need zippers. So this may be a question that when asked, the child may not be able to demonstrate their ability to do so. But you may have to omit that question because it may not be culturally appropriate. Also, mirror play. Some children in some cultures do not play with mirror as a cultural understanding. The parents don't feel that that's appropriate for children to play with mirrors under a certain age. And then lastly, there may be something like serving food to themselves. In some cultures, parents feed children, and children do not serve food, and they do not feed themselves. So children may just not have had the opportunity to do this. So we want to take into consideration that it may be a cultural consideration. You find things like this that are cultural considerations. You can omit the question. And when you omit the question, you can still score that domain by what is called ratio scoring. In ratio scoring, the average of the other questions in that domain is added to the total score to take the place of the skipped item. If any domain has 2 or more skipped questions, then that domain cannot be calculated by ratio scoring. So ratio scoring is an option when you omit a question, or when you omit a question or 2. But if you omit more than 2 questions in any domain, don't score. 3 or more questions omitted, do not score. If it's 2 questions or 1 question, you can still score by ratio scoring, and that's simply by finding the average of the other questions, adding them up and dividing. But if you need help to do that, there's also a tool in the ASQ calculator and on your app online, and it will automatically calculate, given questions that ask you, for example, what the different scores were, how many questions you omitted. It'll calculate what the adjusted score should be. There may be some instances where you may have to skip a question, where it may not be appropriate to say yes, sometimes, or not yet, because the child has not had any experience with that because of cultural considerations. Or you may have a situation where the child just refuses to do it and is having a conniption. And you may have had to omit one of the questions, and as much as you tried to circle back to it, you could not get to it. You can still use the results by averaging the results in any given domain and making that the total score. The ASQ may require materials. Make sure that you bring the materials or that the family already has these materials to facilitate the activities listed. That may require a baby bottle or a blanket that you might hide toys under. Make sure that the family has those things. If you were doing the ASQ online, you may want to talk to the family ahead of time to make sure that they have those things available in their environment, since you're not able to bring them with you if you are doing it online. Ahead of the screening, you can refer to the materials listed on page 200 in the ASQ user guide, but it is also online at the website that we've been looking at before. All right, here's a quiz, a question. What happens if you have an uncooperative toddler? That is, a toddler is just saying no repeatedly and crying when the mom asks her to copy drawings on a paper. How can you proceed given this situation, which you may very well encounter? Should you offer to stop the screening and continue another day? Should you ask the parent to keep trying and have the child demonstrate the skill? Should you play with the child's speed in deciding how to proceed with the screening? Should you score the skill as not yet because the child refused? Or should you ask the parent what she has observed the child do in this area and score it based on parent responses? Now remember, this is just not doing one question. We're talking about an uncooperative toddler that just will not continue with the screening from a certain point on. What do you do? Yes, you can offer to stop the screening and continue another day. That's an appropriate response. You can follow the child's lead in deciding how to proceed. Maybe you need to skip around and try something else. You can also ask the parent what she has observed and then score it based on the parent response alone. That is also acceptable. No, not acceptable is just to say not yet because the child refused. That's not accurate. And also making it a negative experience by continuously trying to have the child do the demonstrated skill and continuously asking the parent, just keep trying, just keep trying, just keep trying, because that may turn it into something we don't want it to be. After the screening is complete and you have all those scores, you want to share the results with parents. And you want to share the results immediately. That is in the same sitting. Notice we just learned how easy it was to score. To take that back sheet and fill it out really quick and find if the child meets the cutoff areas in any of the 5 domains. That can be done in about 5 minutes. So you tell the parents, hold up, let me do the scores. And then in 5 minutes, you can share that with them. Make sure that you honor the parents' feelings instead of dismissing them, because this screen may bring up a lot of feelings. Consider how the parents might be feeling in preparation to complete developmental screening. The same thing is true when you prepare to share the results. The results may make them feel anxious. Sharing results, particularly when the results indicate the child may need further assessment, thus understandably, the approach with empathy. Parents may feel significantly anxious or feel fearful around the child's performance, and the way you talk about the outcome can help to ease those feelings. So the first thing you want to do is, of course, share it as soon as possible, so if those feelings can't mount up and be there for an extended amount of time, you go ahead and talk about it immediately, and that'll ease the feelings, like we just said. Also, you want to start by highlighting the strengths, the child's strengths that you saw, the parent strengths that you saw in the process of the screening, and then go into concerns. Make sure that you start with the great things, the good things, and mention those things first before you start to mention any concerning areas. Also review the purpose of the screening. This is just a screening. It's meant to see if further evaluation is needed. I cannot give a diagnosis. We don't know if there's a developmental problem at this point. We are simply trying to see if further evaluation is necessary. Also mention, when you mention the purpose of the screening, that it's a chance for us to enjoy and celebrate milestones and see together what the child can do. Provide specific examples that demonstrate the concerns or the strengths you are addressing. So when you say that this fell below the cutoff, make sure you say, remember when we saw him do this? Make sure you can give the parents specific examples to connect with why certain strengths you're discussing exist and why you're saying certain concerns exist. Make sure you take a chance to give the specific examples that you and the parent saw and experienced together. Provide the parents with games and ideas and activities to support the child's needs and interests. So if you see an area that can definitely be improved, provide them with activities that can strengthen that domain or those. Tell them when another screening will be administered so that they can expect that coming up and work on that and have child development in front of their minds. And then expect questions. Always expect questions. Even when the results are typical and everything was perfectly fine, there will still be questions. And lastly, because this is all about relationships, make parents feel as part of a team. After you share those results, there will be a need for next steps. When it comes to next steps, we want to connect with our Child and Family Connection office where needed. And you can ask your supervisor what the Child and Family Connections office in your area is. So there may be a need for monitoring and rescreening based on the results, or there may be a need for referrals. And this referrals is what we're saying to the Child and Family Connections office. This little diagram shows that if the score is below a cutoff in one or more areas, below the cutoff in the black area, that you may need to refer them for evaluation to the CFC, Child and Family Connections office, and that may result in EI services or no EI services. Remember, they're going to do further evaluation and they'll determine whether early intervention services are needed or no services are needed. If no services are needed, you will simply loop back to monitoring and rescreening, which is what you do periodically. You may also have scores near the cutoff of one or more areas. If that happens, no need to involve the CFC office unless there are major concerns from the parent. You just simply monitor and screen. Also, if the scores are above the cutoff in each area, we still complete the same process of keeping our eyes on development just to make sure that development continues typically, and we monitor and rescreen. If parents are anxious or they feel that it didn't catch something, they should just reassure them that we will be continuously monitoring and rescreening. These are the steps to do after you get the results and after you share them with parents. Remember, on a previous screen, we saw a checklist for follow-up actions taken. Make sure you check those things that you provided the activities to help, that you provided when a rescreen is going to occur, that you refer to the EI and special education services through the Child Family Connections. Make sure you note those things on that information summary. All right. Lastly, I want to leave you with some resources. Ages and Stages has many things that can help. For example, Kids in the Monitoring Zone, it tells you different activities that you can do. Tips related to developmental screens and cultural considerations, like we talked about, things that may be specific to culture that we may have to adjust for. Activity sheets in English and Spanish. 8 fun things to do with baby from books publishing, and this helps once again with those parent involvement and child development activities that parents and children can do together, and then also for toddlers. And then at the bottom of the screen, once again, you can go to the Ages and Stages website and see the age calculator and the adjusted score calculator, along with many other resources available to you to help in this process.